republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. Looks like the first on the agenda is Road and Bridge.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those need to go to Christina for now.
Good.
All right, good morning. You should have gotten a copy of our big budget packet. So I guess in proceeding forward, I handed out a large map. That's our 2023 proposed construction program. And the smaller page is just some highlights from the 22 transitioning to the 23 budget. I brought Christina, our highway accountant, with today, and I can have her walk through a little bit with the budget highlights, and then we'll see if you have any questions, and we can provide any additional information for you.
Good morning.
Morning.
So on the right side, I'm just gonna go over those highlights. We're requesting $200,000 increase in the apportionment. Expecting 1.5 million in the transit sales tax next year. And we are using a big chunk from our reserve accounts, as you can see. We got a lot of big transit tax project, some out of our building fund and some out of our county road construction. Those accounts receivable projects, they are gonna be billed to the townships and cities that we do the projects for, so they are in and out, but I did list them there. And then as far as disbursements, mainly the biggest thing I wanted to talk about here is just the increase in fuels and parts and just operating expenses in the monthly bills section. Even utilities, Minnesota Power, just stuff like that's all going up. And then I based our payroll off of a 3% COLA and moving to a 2-decimal pay grid. Building replacement fund, we do need to upgrade our handicap door and get an opener button, and then the sidewalk needs some work in hand with that. And then we'll use 55,000 from our reserve account to do that. And then our public works sign out front needs some help. It's kind of facing the wrong way, and it doesn't kind of pertain to the building anymore since solid waste left. And then equipment purchases, we have 540,000 for 2 tandems that we pre-ordered due to supply and demand. And we'll encumber that at the end of this year.
Hopefully.
And those two trucks,
Hopefully. Yes,
those 2 trucks we already okayed.
yeah, yep,
Yeah, they were the ones that we weren't originally budgeting in that year, and we knew that we needed to get them on order because they were about an 18-month delivery. And so you approved them knowing we were gonna pay for it later, but at some point they gotta fall into our budget, so this is where they're at.
yep. So we do know we have to encumber it. We've signed into them. And then we're still looking for a mechanic service truck. Have some trouble getting that on order this year, so we're
That was
hoping next year.
That was approved in last year's or 2022's budget. We're unable to get, the service box is what the big holdup is, but as soon as we get the service box, then we can order the chassis, and the chassis is a big delay too. So, not even for sure that we can get that delivered in 2023, but it will be shifted from 22 to 23. You'll see in
Will you
capital
be
outlay.
able to do tires? I mean, how much service work can you really do? I mean,
Well,
are
our-
you looking at,
Our service truck is still operational, but it's a 2001. And so, I mean, it's time to change that out. I think the unit they've got now is a air compressor welder. It's like an all-in-one unit on the new one. And our old one it's just old, so it's time to replace it. We'll keep operating that until we get the new one, but yeah, just planning
Does it
ahead.
have a lift?
It does. It has a
Lift
crane
and
on it, yeah.
toolboxes
Yep. So we're
built in.
fine for now, yeah.
But yeah, nothing else, outstanding to really talk about. Do you guys have any questions?
I just have a comment. I don't remember, has it been 4 years since we've done anything levy-wise for the highway?
At least, I think.
at least?
Yeah,
So it's not out of line to ask for funds?
no, we don't feel it is. You know, I had Christina put this together. It's probably more information than you need, but going back to 2008, the highway department was at a levy of $3 million.
Could we get copies of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Denise will run and make copies.
I didn't know if you wanted
I
it for
have.
sure.
I
Oh,
probably-
you have copies?
I
Okay,
probably
that'd be
have it.
great, thank you.
So one thing you'll notice on there, yeah, our levy has been, fairly stagnant. It's gone just up and down a little bit. We've been as low as 2.9 million. But, one of the interesting things is you'll see the actual cash received from the tax apportionment. Some of those years, we don't even get what we have coming, just for various reasons. But, no, we feel that we've done, an adequate job of watching our budget, trying to keep track of this. One of the big things for us was the sales tax. That's really helped us out. That's not operational costs, but it does allow us to use what we used to roll our money over each year into the county road construction. It allowed us to keep the levy flat, and that was one of the hopes with the sales tax. It wasn't, some thought that it was gonna be this big money saver to come in. We're just trying to maintain the status quo on this. So, no, we don't think that a 200,000 increase for this next year with the way that we're seeing fuel prices, project costs, wages, all those, it's gotta come from somewhere. So, that's why we asked for the
Do you have a
200,000.
rough idea where the sales use tax will be for '22?
We didn't look recently, but we're already at, I wanna say like 1.2 or 3 million for the year. So we're gonna have another good year. We were at just over 1.8 million last year. And again, if you remember when we initiated that, the estimation was 900,000. And so we had a couple years there that we didn't know what was gonna happen with COVID, and we kinda kept it low. But anyway, for budget purposes, that doesn't really matter, cause that amount just has to stay in a fund balance. We can't use it for anything other than the dedicated projects. So whether you budget for 1.1 million and you get 1.8, it just stays in that balance. So now we did crank it up a little bit to 1.5. I think that's a more realistic number from what we're seeing. But
And it still may be low.
might be a little low. Yeah, we hope to be a little low. I'd rather do that than be a little bit above it, yeah. Yep. So I think another interesting thing too, is Christina mentioned, is the use from the reserve accounts. We got 2.945 million coming out of reserves for this year. That's a very large number, but it's not unheard of. Like when we start putting money aside for the county road construction fund, we know that we're gonna have to save up a little bit here, and finally you get to a project, and the projects now are very, very expensive. And so then you spend a bunch of money out of there, and then you spend the next few years kind of building that back up. So out of county road construction, I think we're taking 1.3 million. And then the sales tax, we have just over 2.5 million planned for construction, with that estimation of 1.5 coming in. So we're gonna take a little over 1 million out of the reserves for that. And I think the remainder was, we got some coming from the building fund, just the 55,000. I think that's about it, yeah.
Yep.
What about that sign we were talking about on the roadway, the PA?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that. They're expensive, but we can throw some numbers together. We did plant a few trees out there to try and get that windbreak back in. He's referring to the trees that went down with the tornado that time, and then we took the remaining scraggly trees out of there. But we had mentioned at one time, it'd be nice to have a public works sign out there, and maybe one with the changeable message roadway safety, maybe what's going on with the county, something like that, but, what we have budgeted for this is just a simple sign out front, Public Works, looks kinda nice. The one we've got now is an old wooden sign, needs to be either stained or painted or something, but it's facing the wrong way, and we would like to upgrade it. We've done some nice improvements to the front area there. I think a nice sign would be in order, so.
How much do you think a sign would cost?
The changeable message one,
Or just a ballpark?
I almost hate to say, but I would guess $40,000 to $50,000. We do not have that budgeted here.
Will we have money somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, we've got building reserves, you know, and nothing other than these small, items here earmarked for that, so we could, and we can look at it, we can get some quotes put together, yeah.
Thank you.
So any other questions on, you can see how our budget's been stagnant on this deal, we just haven't come for a lot of money, and it usually just kind of fluctuates 100,000 or so, depending upon what the boards wanted to cut at certain times, but, yeah, we've got a decent fund balance, although we are hitting it pretty hard this year. We feel pretty comfortable with our reserves, and, you know, if we ever have to tap into that a little bit, it's, you know, usually not a problem. You give us a number and we'll make it work.
And you have healthy reserves?
Yeah, I mean, they look really good before this next year, but, yeah. Yeah, worst case scenario, sometimes you have to delay a project, but delaying doesn't necessarily save you money. It becomes a little more expensive the next year, is at least that's the trend. So you're just kind of delaying the inevitable. The need for the road projects doesn't go away, obviously.
Yeah. I think we delayed one a couple of years ago because of the bituminous costs.
We did, and
Way up.
it worked out well,
And it
but
worked
that's
out.
not typical.
There's one.
Yeah, not typical at all. Yeah, we got lucky on that one, and, yeah, and we'll continue to do that. We actually, something I should point out too, if you look at your 23 construction map, you're gonna see that those 3 LRIP projects in the southwest part of the county, you got Arago Township, Henrietta, and the city of Park Rapids, those are all gonna be delayed to 2023. They're all being designed by consultants. We do have an approved plan for Arago, but they made the decision that they wanted to wait until next year, or probably December, January timeframe to let it for next year. I feel we're too late in the year now. Prices are crazy high, contractor availability is not there, so we kind of gave that recommendation to Henrietta Township for their 204th Street as well, to say, I think if you do this in the winter, prepping for next year, you have all of the contractors taking a look at it with a kind of a blank schedule, and I think that's gonna play out. But Fair Avenue, we just got a copy of the preliminary plan yesterday, so that's a major urban reconstruct on Fair Avenue that obviously won't go till next year. They've got, I think they're still in the process of purchasing right away and whatnot, so those 3 get delayed, but that's the same kind of a thing as you think, timing wise, it makes sense to try for those early in the next year rather than late this year.
Looks good.
I looked it over, I didn't see any big increases or anything, so I thought very reasonable.
Yeah, okay, there's a lot there, so you got any questions, please feel free to give us a call. Myself or Christina or Jeff can help you out, so. Thanks.
Next on the agenda, we have solid waste.
Morning. Well, I had included quite a bit of information in your guys' packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to look that over. Let's get my paperwork out here. So I included quite a bit of information in the background section of the agenda, to kind of paint a narrative of what we're looking at and where we're at with everything. We are proposing for 2023 to have a substantial increase in the solid waste assessment. We are looking at a 19% residential increase and a 14% commercial increase. And due to budget cutbacks in 2021, we didn't raise the solid waste assessment. If you remember, in 2021, we made a slight adjustment to the residential rate. And that was due to more garbage being generated by the residents due to COVID-19. In 2021, we saw a 17% increase in our tipping fees from Polk County, and yet we didn't raise the solid waste assessment, again, due to the cutbacks that we had made in the end of 2020. And in 2021, we generated an additional 7.5% more garbage and 12.5% more recycling than 2020. And we also landfilled 45% more demolition material based on our annual surveys. So we had generated a lot more waste at our facilities. In 2022, last year we did raise the solid waste assessment 3% across the board. And again, this was due to the increase in waste volumes that we saw in 2021 in that 17% increase from tipping fees from Polk County. And to make the budget balance in 2021 and 2022, we relied on our carried over balances from previous years in our fund balance to make our budget balance them the last 2 years. And if you remember, going back a little bit further, our fund balance was used to fund the local cost of the transfer station project, which really depleted our fund balance back in 2018, and it's been struggle with these other things coming up to get that fund balance built back up where it should be. And then for 2023, we have several different things that are kind of pointing to our need to increase our expenditures. Polk County is planning to increase the tipping fee up to $80 a ton next year, so that'll be a $5 per ton increase. Our hauling contract to get our waste hauled up to Polk County was up in 2022, and that has already been out for bid, and then we're looking at a 13% increase for 2023 for hauling. And then also we are accounting for additional higher fuel prices with that as well. And then the supplies, repairs, equipment prices, material prices, increased fuel prices, all that's impacting us this year, and we're planning for that to continue to impact us into the future. And then we have major expenses that will be coming up in 2023 and within the next 10 years due to covering and possibly closing one or both demolition landfills. We are looking at a large capital project in 2023. And are hoping to budget annually for that. After that, moving forward, so once we get to the end of the 10 years, we have the money in our fund balance to finish closure and cover costs at our landfill facilities. Our tipping fee, we're looking at, again, a similar increase as our assessment, at roughly a 20% increase to our tipping fee schedule. With our tipping fee schedule, even with the projected fee increase, we're still really going to be consistent to what most other surrounding counties are for tipping fees. Other changes, we're not proposing to increase the total number of staff positions for 23, but we are looking to create a scale or attendant office type position to help us better fully utilize our scale that we have at our facility. And this is really going to be to we moved over to our solid waste office where we have our administrative assistant in the office permanently over there. And this would be to be able to operate our scale on the weekends and then also do other projects. We'd be changing our complement of current employees, so we would not fill an open part-time position that we have. The end result would be a 0.5 increase in our FTE for our department. In our budget, which you have seen in our budget, it reflects an $800,000 capital project that we're hoping to complete next year. This would be funded outside of the solid waste assessment. We had applied for the ARP funds to place final cover and intermediate cover on the portion of our south landfill. And that cost was originally estimated at $563,000. Since that funding is no longer available, and with increase in construction costs, and also an additional cover project at North Landfill, we're estimating a need of about $800,000 to complete these projects in 2023. And the South Transfer Station project, that work is part of our corrective action plan from the Pollution Control Agency to address groundwater issues. And it's keeps getting delayed and delayed, waiting on this funding. So we're looking to move forward with that in 2023. For our equipment upgrades, facility improvements, they're in line with previous years. And again, we are planning for increased costs for equipment maintenance, fuel and operating supplies, and looking at the long term to being able to plan and account for cover and landfill closing in the future. And then we're also counting in our budget for having to have increased sampling costs to our groundwater monitoring for 2023, and that's related to I'll say unfunded mandates or requests from the Pollution Control Agency to monitor for PFAS in our wells in 2023, and that is still isn't for sure yet. And our county and most other counties around the state and other landfill facilities are all working with the PCA and developing that plan, but that has a potential to add pretty much, I would say $50,000 annually onto our monitoring costs for groundwater. So quite a substantial amount that we at least need to plan for in our budget. After accounting for that, if we do that $800,000 capital project outside of the solid waste assessment, we're looking at having our revenues exceed our expenditures by $16,000 roughly, and then we are anticipating to carry over about $216,000 from our fund balance. Again, that would be used to plan for future capital costs related to our landfill cover and closure. Going through, Jeff, if you want to go down to the worksheets there. That first worksheet kind of goes through a history of where we've been at and what we're looking for this next year. And there's just a few changes. I'll just highlight the changes in this document, or the big changes from that are different from the 2022 budget. The first one with the special assessment. So the first line item there, we'd be looking at, again, a 19% increase in residential, 14% increase in commercial. If you go down to the fees, a few lines down where it says $360,000 there, that'd be up from $300,000. So again, that'd be roughly a 20% increase. For salaries and wages on my spreadsheet here, so this spreadsheet's a little bit different than what you'll see in IFS. I had planned for an additional 3% on wages. And that's basically, since my program's funded by the solid waste assessment, I really want to be cautious on making sure we're accounting for anything that could happen with labor contracts and just providing a little extra cushion on the 3% that the rest of the county's planning for. So depending on what happens, that could possibly come down, but again, I wanted to plan conservatively on that. And then basically there isn't too many other changes, major changes from last year. Some of them, the other ones, I guess Christina, I think had already touched on with utilities, electricity. We're seeing some increases in that we have to account for next year. Again, our tipping fee is going up $5 a ton, and then our hauling for that waste is going up 13%, plus I'm planning for an additional increase to fuel prices. And then it really just impacts our operating supplies in both budgets and our what we plan for fuel and motor fuel and lube. those costs, just increasing with increased fuel prices and material prices.
So that, what you have there is different than what we have in the book, so you must have lowered it by 20,000? Because in our book, it's listed at 80. I had
Yeah.
that one marked.
Yeah, I did make a few,
It's on page 91, at the bottom.
oh, you're looking at 392.
Oh, I'm sorry, and you're looking at 391,
Yep,
okay.
Sorry. But I did have a few of them, there's, are a few other, few changes that are, off the IFS report that I'll highlight a
Okay.
little bit too.
Okay, thanks.
Then the other thing, I guess just looking at, the equipment purchases, nothing too out of the ordinary for this next year. We're looking at having to have some major work done on our dozer at their south transfer station, budgeting for some dumpster replacement, then a bobcat and a pickup for the facility for the next year, in our 391 budget.
On the equipment, have we used up all the possible grants? Because I know you've used a lot of those in the past, but now that we're to this point,
Yeah, there isn't really any grants for what we're looking at right now. We still have, this year we'll still be getting a little bit more grant funding in for our projects we have now.
Question on the 392 budget on equipment purchases, 2022 was 50,000, and now 2023 jumping up to 300,000.
I saw that too.
Our levies is pushing pretty high this year. Is there any way some of that can be cut?
So we kind of, looking at the 391 and 392, we just kind of depends on what account it comes from. If you'll notice in like our 2022 budget, we had 260 budgeted for our 391 equipment purchases. And this year we're going down to 100,000. And, last year we were just really in a good place for equipment. You can see the previous year we had budgeted 465,000 for equipment. And it was just where we were at, we only needed 50,000. I think looking out, through this process, have developed a capital plan for looking out over equipment purchases and replacement schedules over the next 10 years. And it's really looking like between the both accounts, 391 and 392, we really need to be budgeting for around 400,000 a year for equipment replacement costs. And that's where we're at for this year once you add both the 391 and 392.
And you can see in 392 or in 2021, you had budgeted 465 and actually spent only 123. I know that was because you had delayed some projects and purchases.
Yeah, and one of them, you'll see I think on the actual IFS, one of our 2022 Packer truck didn't, it was ordered in 2021, we didn't receive it till 2022, so that will show that we exceeded that budget quite a bit too, but it was just since it was delayed, but. What we're looking for, I guess, in our equipment budget for the 392 account, is we're just looking for, again, dumpster and totes, continuing to replace old materials there. Again, we have budgeted half a bobcat, half a pickup, splitting that cost between the two accounts. A forklift for our facility, and the major expense there that goes into that $300,000 number is a hook truck. Our hook truck right now is a 2017, I believe, and then it's getting up to, I think, next year will probably be in the 150,000 mile range on that. So, and we're starting to have a lot of issues with these vehicles with their DEF systems once they get into that mileage range. So, really, that's a major expense that I think we really need to. I'm looking at replacing with how much we use that truck, going to Foston pretty much daily, if not twice a day in the summer, so.
Yeah, that there would rack up the miles.
I have a comment on the special assessments. I still think it's one of the best possible benefits of living in Hubbard County. You should just pay one time. And I know someone that's doing a remodel in Becker County, and they hauled one dump trailer load, and they wanted $200,000 for, or $200 rather, for one trailer load. So I am fine with the increase in the assessment. Plus, all the, you justified it in the expenses.
That increase is 15%.
I know it is, but when you think of how many times you can haul pretty much any type of garbage you want, any amount of time in Hubbard County, for $188, that's a good deal.
Any idea how much that's gonna be per household?
With the assessment,
Yeah.
so it'd go from $158 to $188 for the annual solid waste assessment.
You commented here that everything's gone up, 7.5% more garbage, 12.5% more recycling, 45% more demolition material. Do you see any of those numbers going down in the future?
Well, I think in 2022, they actually have went down a little bit, and that was mainly the big increase in 2021 was also, besides just the increase, or natural increase in garbage that people are producing, was the Enbridge project. So looking at where we're at, well, I guess I got that here too. So over 2021, we're actually down about 3% in our waste volumes from last year. But going back to 2022, we're still up 6% or 7% at this through August. So, so a lot of that huge spike last year was the Enbridge project, but it's still going on an upward climb.
Okay. And so if everybody, all the residents did a better effort in not creating garbage, that would help our budget, but there's still some capital costs and things that, covering the landfills, closing the landfill, stuff like that. Those are costs that just aren't gonna go away.
No.
Plus, closing the demo landfill at the South Station just means we have to haul that stuff, so actually that's gonna be an increase to the budget.
More, fuel to the north.
And if we don't accept that, it ends up in road ditches and abandoned lots and,
Yeah.
That's
We
the
pay for it.
That's the reality. This is the cost of
Right.
providing the service. You have two choices. You either assess it or you levy for it. Well, I guess you got three choices. Or you find some other alternate way of dealing with garbage, which I don't think exists. So I think the best way to pay for it is, assess on the use. I don't know how else you do it. It's, and like Shar said, personally, I'd gladly pay it. I mean, it's a good value. Better than most places, and I know several people from outside the county that believe it's a great value.
well, you even think, you can haul brush in there, you can bring dirt back home. I mean, and now you're recycling the organics, you're doing what you can to minimize and then reuse.
What are out of county? People come in, is that increased, decreased?
I have it later on here if we,
Sorry.
so that's in our tipping fee schedule, so, again, we're looking at raising our out-of-county fees 20% like the rest of our tipping fees, so we'd be going from $200 a year up to $240 a year. So an out-of-county, individual would pay $240 and they could dump their garbage and recycling like a Hubbard County resident could for that price, so.
I think Tom's concern was at 15%. What if we increase that and decrease the assessment?
But you'd have to increase it a lot if you think about how many residents pay $188, or
We don't really have too many people that, there isn't a big proportion of people out of county that get that permit, so.
So I've never paid a hauler to come and pick up my garbage, because we always take our stuff in, so I have no idea what it costs. And I'm not dinging them at all, because that's a wonderful service. But if we all had to hire a hauler, I think it'd be more than $188 a year, wouldn't it?
Nope.
Nope. But but then if you're only
limited
picking
to
up the
what you
garbage,
haul.
but what about if you're doing remodeling and brush and stuff like that?
That's a different story.
All that's
but
extra.
I have service right to the door, you know, and, it's not very expensive at all.
So everyone has that option.
Everyone has that option.
Everyone has the option.
Yeah, everyone
It's
has
somewhere
that
between
option.
35 and 50 bucks a quarter.
A quarter?
It's cheap.
But
But
it's still then, it still equals out to my point was, it still equals $188 a year.
But I guarantee you it's going up.
That's reflective of
last year.
how much we're subsidizing the cost for them to deliver it to our solid waste transfer
point.
station. If you go to Clay County or anywhere else and look at it, you were paying $50 or $60 a month for hauling.
And again,
I
yeah,
guarantee you it's going up. Because everything is.
And
with the haulers, you're just paying the service for hauling it,
Yes.
you know, they don't pay for the disposal of it, so
Okay,
that's on the
because
assessment.
you've already paid it.
But that only includes, you know, a standard garbage can or two.
Yeah.
That's what he put it.
And the fact that we're showing the project being reliant on other source of funding, our capital, our closing costs, et cetera, we don't have other sources of funding for that.
Right.
Even if we had the ability to pay that out of ARPA funds, we would not be using those for something else. So we don't use any levy dollars to offset this, we just use the fees that we generate from this and the assessments that we generate from this. When I looked at the first budget and I solved the problem, we needed a 50% increase in our fees for the year. And a 50% increase in the fees for the year would be $5 a month.
so if I understand you correctly, so this person from Becker County that was gonna be charged that $200 could pay $240 and haul over here for a year?
Yep, for their garbage and recycling. It doesn't include the other, you know,
It doesn't include like that
Demolition or
demo,
stuff
okay.
like that.
Okay, so then are they charged per load here also, or how does that work?
Yep, in our fee schedule, we have a per load charge if out of county brings in anything. If it's anything other than burnable garbage or recycling, they'd be charged out of county rates for that, so.
Thanks.
Would they also be charged for hazardous household waste?
That shouldn't be accepting that from out of county.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sure it happens some, but I mean, that stuff should definitely be going to their own county for generations, so. If you can scroll down, Jeff, a couple more slides there. That chart is just showing our, really where our funds come from. So you can see with our program, 87% comes from the assessment, 8% comes from our tipping fees, and then very minimal amounts come from the levy. The only portion of the levy is just our matching score grant, our match for our score grant that we're required to have. And then we have very minimal with sales of recyclable material and other stuff that factors into our revenue. The next slide down is the solid waste assessment chart. And again, looking at, right now, we have a unit calculation of 0.67 for the solid waste assessment on residential parcels. I'll be looking at changing that to 0.7, and then again increasing the multiplier across the board from 14% for residential and commercial, so that's how we get up to the 188 for residential. And the minimum commercial assessment would be going from $212 up to $242, which again would be a 14% increase. Comparing that, to looking at other counties, reaching out to other counties, seeing what they're looking at for next year. Beltrami County is looking at proposing $171 a year residential assessment next year. And that only includes their garbage and recycling, so up there they're paying additional for any oversized material, furniture, demolition, all that, so, where ours is included in that fee, so. Going down to the next page, we have our proposed tipping fee schedule. And again, looking at roughly a 20% increase in tipping fees. Like I mentioned, the out-of-county permit would go from $200 up to $240. Our non-burnable rate, so this is when most of these other fees will apply if contractors haul in the waste. So our non-burnable rate would go from $17 up to $20. Our demolition debris rate would go from $12 up to $15. Our clean shingle rate, I'm actually proposing to drop that from 6 down to 5. And that's a result of us having that project where we're not having a major cost to grind shingles anymore. So I'd be charging the same price as what we charge for brush and that type of fees, just for maintaining and accepting that material. Clean concrete, we'd go from 6 up to 8. Brush, we'd go from 4 up to 5. Burn structure debris would go from 20 up to 24. Tires, residents can bring in up to 20 tires a year. And we'd look at anything above and beyond that, or commercial, we'd go up from $3 to $4. Or if they pay by the ton, it'd go from $240 a ton up to $288 a ton. And that's reflective of what our actual cost is this last year in 2022, and we have a 2-year contract, so that's what our actual cost of disposal is. Crushed concrete, from what we sell, we're looking at keeping that the same. And then compost, or loading compost out, or if we have wood that we can load out for residents, we'd increase that loading fee up from $2 to $3. Looking, I guess on the right side there, you can see where other counties were at in 2022, and then I did get Beltrami's numbers for what they are proposing in 2023. That's not finalized, but so you can see we're really similar, or actually lower on most categories, I would say, comparatively to surrounding counties. So.
Question, in recycling, what happened to state grants for recycling? That looks like it went to 0. I mean, there's very little revenue in the recycling budget.
Let me get there here. So the state grant fund in there is just for the special grants, competitive grants that I applied for. So if you look in 2021, if we're on the 392 budget, I had budgeted $241,000 for state grants, and that was with the project that we did up at the North Transfer Station, and updating our recycling containers. So it's just a competitive grant that we had a chance to apply for and we received. So it isn't the only money we get for continued recycling is with our SCORE grant from the state, which is 392-5315, and you can see that in 2021 we received $69,692. It's going up slightly in 2022. Looks like it'll be about $72,000. And that's one of the things that, if you remember, this last legislative session has discussing with the board and big legislative pushes to increase that funding, because obviously that's just a drop of the bucket for what we spend on recycling. So that's going to be a continued push by the Solid Waste Association, AMC, moving forward to hopefully increase that grant money coming to counties to offset their recycling costs. So.
Because, yeah, 391 totally subsidizes 392 with the assessments, yeah.
So an example of that would be, I think it was last year, or maybe the year before, there was no revenue from glass. But if you take glass out of the recycling, not only do people get out of the habit, but then it ends up in the landfill. So then it ends up costing us in a different area.
Yeah, and I mean, everything the big savings that the county has with recycling too is we don't pay anything for a tipping fee. So our recycling that goes to Polk County, we pay $0 a ton, where anything we send in the garbage or to the landfill goes at $80 a ton next year. So, we still have that big incentive there, just financially, to recycle, so.
And wasn't the tipping fee was it $65 just a couple years ago?
Yeah, it was $65 a ton, I believe, and I don't know if I have them numbers, but it was $65 a ton. Last year it went up to 75, and this year it's going up to 80 next year, 2023. And again, they're, the same costs we're experiencing with fuel, operation, equipment costs. I mean, everything, it's impacting them prices, so.
Everything's going up.
Without wages to cover it.
I think that's, I don't think I really had anything else to share with you guys unless you had any more questions, so. Oh, I guess, sorry, I was gonna go through the next couple slides there, from the IFS budget that had come out, just a couple things there. If you see page 89. So again, these changes are reflected in that first spreadsheet that I went over. But the solid waste levy, so that first one, 5051 special assessments, my current working number is $4,080,602. Again, looking at just the salaries and wages, them aspects, I have, in my numbers, just accounted for additional 3%, again, just to be on the conservative side. On 3916261, professional and technical services, I lowered that from 15,000 down to 10,000. Just anticipating their costs will probably decrease in that area. And then on page 90, on 3916630, dedicated equipment replacement, I had lowered that from 25,000 to 10,000. So that's that's a line item where it's just usually carryover money into the next year. But since we built that capital plan out over the next 10 years, I don't feel like we have to be putting it in that line item anymore. So that lowered our expenses a little, just slightly in that account. Going to page 91. Again, having that additional 3% on the wage info there. Other major change on page 92 was in 6613, building acquisition and construction. On my worksheet, I've lowered that from 20,000 to 10,000. And again, that dedicated equipment replacement from 25,000 down to 10,000. So, remember just the changes that I've made since that IFS budget's come out, so. If you guys have any questions that come up, feel free to reach out, and we'll keep looking at this too and seeing if there's anything else we can look at, so.
All right. Is there any other questions? Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Good job.
Next, we have the proposed ordinance for licensing of THC cannabinoid products. This is something that was added.
Last minute, sorry about that. Yeah.
So I didn't get to study on it at all. So
Well, you've seen it before, it just is a little different now.
enlighten us.
Yeah. So, I'm here both, as the county attorney, of course, but also, as a representative of Hubbard and Prevention, which is a community-based nonprofit, that attempts to, provide resources so that children are not either consuming alcohol or using controlled substances. Ultimately, well, that's not the right way to say that, I apologize. As the board is aware, there was a law that was passed earlier this year that made certain edibles with THC legal in the state of Minnesota to sell. That law does restrict the purchasing age to 21. You have to be 21 or older. The seller cannot use packaging that would entice a child under the age of 21. That is basically the law right now, is anyone can sell it as long as they meet those those conditions. So I think in this particular case, I'm bringing forward both as the county attorney, because I do believe for public safety reasons, some type of regulation is important and necessary for public safety, but also to protect our children as a representative of HIP. So this, well, the board, I think, has three options. One is to outright restrict the sale of any cannabis THC product. And that has been done by a couple of different cities throughout the state. And they've done that saying, we're gonna wait to see, or we're gonna wait to actually figure out how we're gonna regulate that. But in the meantime, you just cannot sell it in our city. So that has happened. Secondly, and more middle of the road would be to go with a licensing. And there's some questions, or not questions, but there is some issues that go along with that, and that it would restrict the sale of any cannabis product, which is being done right now in the city of Park Rapids as well as the county. It would restrict it upon passage, so there's some questions about how would there be a moratorium on whether or not they could sell before they got their license. How would that work? But the third option is to do nothing. And I will say that the state is, based off of my research and speaking with legislators, they are looking at putting together some sort of legislation for licensing and regulation within the next year. Whether or not that passes or not is a different question. So I'm bringing this forward to the board to know, or for the board to make a decision as to one of those three options, unless somebody has a different option, but I think those are the three.
Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that in edibles, it is not regulated for amount. And
Sure.
just a note of interest, in Colorado that sells whatever, in certain counties,
Sure.
they've had an increase of even dogs dying from eating things that are found on the ground, and by the time they get them to the vet, it's too late. So
Sure.
I just say as a point of interest that even here, the edibles are not regulated.
They are not, and I will say that in this proposed ordinance, which is what I'm putting forth to discuss here today, it does not regulate what's in the packaging.
Right.
It basically refers back to the state, and the state in their legislation does not regulate that either. I'm not in a position, and I don't, not to disparage the board, but I don't believe the board is in a position to be scientists as to what should be in the packaging. But the state does need to take action on that. And in the meantime, the question is, what does a county or a city do? And obviously here we're dealing with Hubbard County. And like I said, I think there's three options. Outright say no, not until it's regulated correctly. Two, let's at least make the person selling it have a license so that we know who's selling it. And if they are selling something that is not legally, or is hurting people, that they can be held accountable in civil court. Or three, wait for the state to do something within the next couple of years. So.
Another point of
Yeah.
interest that we got from one of our AMC meetings was that for edibles, when you eat it, it takes like 3 to 5 hours for it to hit you, get you stoned. Well, smoking it's pretty quick, but 3 to 5 hours. So if someone could be eating an edible, a while back, and then get on the road quite a bit, several hours later, and they're going to be under the influence.
We have run into that, well, I shouldn't speak for Corey, but we have had some reports countywide regarding individuals utilizing edibles and not realizing the potency. Despite the fact that they are under that 3% threshold, being very, very impaired.
So from a legal standpoint, if somebody is high and they do get behind a motor vehicle, it seems to me the only measure is very subjective, because there's no concrete test.
That's right.
For measuring for, well, you can measure for, was it THC or TCH, whatever.
By blood.
But that can stay in your bloodstream for months, doesn't mean you're high.
Agreed. So THC can be measured in two ways, the inactive and the active part of THC. Even with active THC in someone's system, I've seen reports where the individual was not showing signs of impairment, and I've seen signs that they were very, very impaired. So it is a difficult measurement, scientifically likely impossible long-term to regulate that. The inactive is a different issue where it's in for 30 to 45 days, and they're not showing impairment at that point, but.
And that's the whole struggle with the state legalizing it in my book. If you had a simple test, like the blood alcohol test or the breathalyzer that you have for alcohol, that makes the decision a lot easier, but that doesn't exist, so it's very convoluted on what this can lead to and where that would lead legally in a court case. But I don't think doing nothing is the answer. And if you're going to have the state adopt this as being legal, then we should treat it very similarly to the way we treat alcohol and tobacco, and be consistent with how we license it, or the facilities.
And that gets me back to what we're talking about here today, which is if the board is considering, and obviously we're here at a work session, so no action needs to be taken. I just wanted to get any input as far as what should or should not be changed. What this ordinance, this proposed ordinance does is create a licensing ordinance for an individual selling any THC product that is legal in the state of Minnesota to sell, which right now is the case. There is THC products that are legal to sell here in the state of Minnesota. It does require the county board to set licensing fees, and the responsible authority as it relates to who to present a license to would be Ms. Rave at the auditor's office, as she's already doing tobacco and alcohol in the county. There are other questions that I had for the board as it relates to, let me just get to the right page here.
The other positive is it makes the sheriff's department and law enforcement aware of where it's being sold.
I think they already know that.
Yeah.
But it also holds them accountable until the state comes in and figures out what they're gonna allow to be in that packaging. Right now, as I said, I don't believe that we're in a position as a county, or at least I'm not in a position to write an ordinance that says you can only sell, this THC from this particular distributor through the FDA. That I am not an expert in any of that. The state needs to come in with their federal partners and make that happen, to make that correct. But in the meantime, if there is any injury to an individual, we know who they are. Because they have to get a license, or they're already getting cited for selling without a license.
I would assume, Jonathan, that part of this might be where they could display it in their store. Say at a gas station, they couldn't have it right out front there where it'd be an impulse buy. It would be something that'd be behind the counter like the cigarettes are.
That is not in what I drafted, but I am more than happy to put that in as an option for the board to consider on, where they're selling it, putting a restriction in that. Obviously, the restrictions, well, not obviously, but if you've read it, the restrictions that are a part of this particular ordinance are on page 2 and 3 for the board, I believe. I'm sorry. Well, the actual, what has to be in the application is on page 2, going on to page 3. The licensing fees, it's page 3, granting of the license, that specifically goes through what the board would consider in granting a license to sell. And obviously, one of those things is that they have to be 21 years of age. If they've been a felon, they could not get a license. And I could walk through it, but the board is aware of what those are. I do also include proximity to locations frequented by youth, schools, churches.
So would we define a specific distance then? It's already defined?
I'll let you answer that. The
Yeah.
1,000 feet, we explained that, 1,000 feet.
Proximity to locations frequented by youth, including schools, churches, ice cream parlors, and retail establishments selling candy. That gives the board the discretion to look at where these establishments are looking to locate. It also allows these locations to be in places that can get a license. So it doesn't outright restrict the sale in Hubbard County by any stretch, but it does give the board the ability to say, we're not going to grant this license because it's too close. It is not specifically articulated what that distance needs to be. That is going to be up to the 5 electeds here in Hubbard County as to what that should look like
So then
in the way that this is written.
something like Walmart couldn't sell it because they have candy at Walmart.
Yeah, what did you say?
Candy.
It's a good question.
Is this gonna be your?
It's a good question. And the answer is, it is frequented by youth. So I would advise the board that it should very, very strongly consider whether or not granting a license to Walmart for a THC edible is a good idea, given how much youth goes to Walmart. And that's, again, up to the 5 electeds to make a decision on whether or not that's a good idea under the restrictions that you're looking at in granting that license or not. So, yeah, I guess that's my legal answer for you.
So Jonathan,
Yeah.
The newest update, what does our surrounding counties have currently?
I know that it's been brought up by, and I can't recall the exact county, it has come up as something similar to this, to do a licensing ordinance. Your question is, has anybody done this yet?
In our yeah, that I, cause I missed a few meetings.
And I don't, the answer is they're not surrounding, no. And I think the reason for that is that they're kind of waiting for the state to take action to fix the fact that they didn't regulate legalization of THC below 3%. But that being said, I do think one way or the other, the counties will have to take action. They just haven't at this point, other than a couple, 3 to 4 different cities throughout the state who have outright banned it right off the bat, said you cannot sell in our city. We will figure out if we're going to license or not.
I
So
think
did
the
they put a
city of Glendon
moratorium
has.
on?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Glendon, yes. Rosedale, I think, did the same.
So Glendon and I was gonna ask you. about-
Robbinsville, I believe, actually, now that I think about it.
But they put a moratorium on for a year?
They put a moratorium for a year for the purposes of figuring out what they're gonna do as far as regulation, if any. But right now, you just can't sell it in those cities,
I think it was.
which is an
Glendon.
option as well for the board.
It was either Glendon or several cities in Wisconsin that have a paraphernalia ordinance.
Yeah, but I was just concerned, like, around our area, if anything had changed that was brought up at our meeting, and I don't think so.
I think, to the best of my knowledge, no county around us has taken action at this point.
We can talk about this later.
Yeah, so I haven't even read this, so, but, Mr. Chair, I would like further discussion on this at some point.
October's work session?
Sounds good to me.
October might be really busy with budget stuff.
We can shoot for October.
That might be why the other counties haven't done anything yet.
Sometime this year, I think, is what you wanted to say, right?
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
If not October, then November's work session?
yeah, so whenever you guys can fit it in.
Thank you, Jonathan.
No, and I appreciate the board's time on this. This is something that I do think, one way or the other needs to be decided on by the county board as to what the right direction is, which is why I'm bringing it, in front of the board here today. Ultimately, what the board decides is up to the 5 electeds in front of me here. I do think some continued discussion about it is a good idea. If any of the commissioners would like to look through it and make some corrections and email that to me, I would appreciate it as far as potential changes that they would like to see. I think that would be helpful in the discussions at the next work session. Thank you.
Liquor stores? What's the location, proximity location to the frequented by youth, et cetera, et cetera?
Can't be in liquor stores, I think. Didn't
No,
you know
but
that?
is there a certain distance that they have to be away from those establishments?
For liquor stores under the ordinance, they can't be within, and I'm trying to remember how close they can be to schools and churches, which is why you see liquor stores in certain places. It's not frequented, there's no restriction on frequented by youth. When it comes to liquor stores, it's, well, other than schools and churches, I should say.
And there's not like a foot, like 1,000 feet or whatever?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but it might be 1,000 feet, actually.
Is that same for restaurants and bars that serve alcohol?
It is not in our county and not in Minnesota that I'm aware of, no.
So I'm just, yeah, if you go into paraphernalia and then cities and stuff, there's a lot of information out here we can be looking up. Northfield, Glendon. Yeah, so before we do the work session, hopefully each one of us can do some research.
And yeah, anything you can provide that you would like to see in the ordinance, I would appreciate, thank you.
So Jonathan, is there anything out there that we have a flat out no in our county already?
As far as things that are otherwise legal in the county?
Yes.
There is one additional thing, well, it's not a flat-out no, because we do have a license for it, and that is adult establishments. Adult establishments are legal in the state of Minnesota, and in Hubbard County, we have an ordinance that allows for an individual to apply for that ordinance, or apply for that license, I should say, I apologize. That being said, there is no adult establishments in Hubbard County, and no license, to my knowledge, has ever been granted as it relates to an otherwise legal establishment, but it has never been granted by the board. I can't say whether or not someone has ever applied or not to even ask for a license, but I know that there is no adult establishments in this county.
I didn't even know there was an ordinance until just a couple of years ago. All righty.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to talking and getting the emails and talking at the next work session. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Next, we have the Soil, Water, and Conservation District. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, is it okay if I hand out one additional page?
Definitely.
And did everyone receive a copy of our work plan? Perfect.
Thank you.
Carry that with you, Tom, all the time?
This one?
Yeah.
Well, it's, you were handy in my office.
I gave this to a student that may be in here,
Oh, wonderful.
and she was really excited, you know what I mean? To be a part of it. I'll show you.
That's the first time that we had them produced this way, and I got my spirals stuck together.
Meant a lot to her.
Thank you very much for having us here today. I'd just like to start by holding up the work plan. The intent of doing it this way, with the pages in the front that are topic-based, having highlights from what we achieved last year and ways to get involved next year. This is intended so everyone can use this as handouts if you're going to an event and have a special topic, or if you want to mail it to a landowner or any of the conversations you're having. So if there are pages in here that anyone wants to have printed and you want to request we print them for you, we can do that. Just let me or one of our staff people know and we can send them to you so you can use them as works for you. This is our first stab at doing it this way, so we will improve from here next year.
So
But-
I'm just wondering, because it's very nicely done, did you hire an advertising firm, or did you guys do it all yourselves?
We did it ourselves.
Wow, very
Um,
impressive.
I created the template and I asked our technicians to start filling in with pictures that we took while we were in the field over the last year. And the information of what they did and what we have lined up. So we did it as a team internally. There are a few pictures that came from other people, landowners and people we've worked with in the last year. But those pages, if there's anything there you would like to have printed, let us know. They're there to use that way. And then in the middle, we have our budget information. And then after that, we have our work plan for success. And this is intended to be a checklist where we can go through and say, yes, we're doing that, or no, we haven't managed to do that and we need to readjust. So we will be using this internally, but if you see something in the work plan that you have questions or concerns about, we could always schedule a meeting to look through what's going on and share ideas if that situation comes up. So that's the intent of why we have it set up this way. And then I hope that it's useful. I will also comment that I don't know if anyone likes to use these scan codes. I became aware a lot of people are using them more when I saw my mom use them. And I realize now too that every time I take a picture of something with my phone, if there's a code on it, it automatically wants to go to that website. So we've been using them to share videos and our online virtual lab that has materials both for landowners and the schools to use with their programs. So, you know, if it comes up that anyone has an idea of something else that you or someone else is working on that should be added, let us know. And Jake on our staff is really good at integrating these kinds of things with maps and everything. So. Thank you. And then if we look at the budget, the 2023 budget, for our county request, we're requesting $36,000 for county allocation. That is the same amount that we did request last year, and in previous years we requested $30,000. You know, we're not adding any additional. We know it's a hard year for budget. We still have the same pressures that we always do. If you look at our overall budget, our budget is based on projects, based on grants, based on specific activities. And each of these activities, each of these grants, they don't want to cover anything that doesn't fall within their project requirements. So what happens for us at SWCD is we have plenty of funds to do the projects and to do these specific tasks. But one of the most important parts of our job is talking to the public and talking to the community and answering questions and talking through what people would like to do. Another important part is keeping records of those conversations, records of the information that can help us get grants to do the projects. And then, of course, other daily activities. It is really hard to cover all of those costs with the project grants, and I am constantly looking at what my options are to do so. But one of the things that I've discovered is that we can get more and more project grants and still have the same struggle with those essential activities. So that's what's happened to us since I started. If you take a look at, I'll hold up this document actually that I just passed out. Our work area, this page, the map itself shows you all of the points on the map that our team, our SWCD staff, were at in the last year, physically at to do one thing or another. The key on the side, if you want to look at, can explain what activities we were doing. If you look at the column of text looking forward, highlight these funds we wouldn't have
with exception to the One Watershed, One Plan, if we didn't have the county allocation dollars to support my time in talking with people and documenting things that people want to do, documenting needs, and then writing grants to try and get the funds. If you notice the area up in the northeast, the 319 work area, we just recently were awarded the 319 Small Watersheds grant for that area. That's potentially 16 years of funding, potentially over $1 million to address all the water quality and land management issues we can think of in that area. I would not have been able to apply and succeed with that grant without the funds that you provide. Those are federal dollars. So the money that you provide to us from the county does help us achieve much more than we would even just with those dollars. We're putting it toward getting more money from other sources, federal and foundation, to do more work, more projects. We also have the MGLP shoreland projects. That's the National Fish and Wildlife Fund that we've been using to address shoreland issues on the man-trap chain, including Lake Beltane. Those funds are expiring next year, but it was $89,000 total. We have the forest management support. Some of that is coming from an LSR grant, which is federal funds, and some of it from DNR, private forest management. I would not be able to build those relationships without the funds from the county either. The carbon sequestration project, that's Morgan and McKnight family funds coming through Northern Waters Land Trust. We're partnering to work together to figure out how carbon sequestration can fit in with current programs and serve our landowners well. We're hoping that it can also become part of the county forest management plan in the future, and that the results of doing this work up front will help us have a carbon sequestration program that is impactful and also promotes the long-term health of the forest and includes thoughtful harvesting, so there's an economic impact other than the program itself. So we're doing the work to try and guide how those things are being developed for our area so it serves us well. So those are some of the things that the funds that you provide to us impact us being able to do and work on getting moving and get these other funds. I have been thinking about, since I talked with Jeff, about the difficulty in funding the administrative activities and how that goes. And I was thinking that we have all these project funds, if you look at our federal and state funds on our budget. And so I have a what if for you to consider. We frequently have a hard time getting an engineer for projects that involve culverts on roadways, which ends up being a fish passage. If you have a culvert that's not correct, you have fish passage problems, you have potential water quality problems, you have the potential of the road washing out. We see this a lot on the township roads and some of the smaller roads. We could potentially pay for one of your engineers' time to do some of the planning and engineering through our project funds. And that would, of course, then be part of that person's time for the year, which I think is pretty fixed because everybody tends to not be allowed to work overtime very much. So if we were able to have an agreement in advance and say, this is how many culvert projects we think we have in the works for the upcoming year, and you have an engineer whose time could be put toward that, and we could use some project funds to pay for their time, it would help us do more work faster, it would speed up our process, it would reduce our cost for that engineering, because our engineering costs us a lot right now when we go through private consultants for much of it. And then that might also reduce the burden of what I am asking for you to help support our essential day-to-day activities, because we will be helping to pay for one of those county employees' time.
Jeff, have you had any discussion with Jed on this possibility?
Hadn't heard it till now.
Okay,
I actually talked to Jed 3 weeks ago after the Mississippi Headwaters One Watershed One plan, and it was brought up there about culverts. And I did talk to Jed about just, you know, what do they do now type of a thing. I think it's a good idea.
do they have time?
I don't know about if time, you know, we didn't get into specifics, but Jed said definitely that they look at those kinds of things and
Okay,
so I think it's gonna.
partnership would be great
Yeah,
if
I
they
like
have the
that
time.
idea.
Okay. I think it would make a huge difference for us, and if it, you know, also could make a difference for you, and of course, if it's making a difference for us, it'll make a difference for the people of our county too, because we'll get more done, address these things better and more of them for the cost, I believe. So I really appreciate you hearing that suggestion, and if I could reach out to Jed to ask about it, should I include anyone specifically from Jeff?
for sure.
Jeff, okay, okay.
Tom, do you want to be included on anything, because you're on the SWCD board?
Tom and Jeff, okay. That sounds good. Thank you. And that's really what I wanted to present to you today. On the back of this map that we were just talking about is our highlights of things that we did accomplish last year. I just included this. It's also in our annual report, but I thought it's always nice to know when you're thinking about the organization you're working with, what are they actually doing, and how does that also align with what they want to do. I think that the amount we've been able to achieve in the last couple years demonstrates that we can do a lot, and we're determined to do a lot, and we'll find a way to do it. We have a lot on the looking forward side to do. We did get the Crow Wing One Watershed One Plan planning grant. We were funded, so we will be able to start planning this winter. And that's a big responsibility with Hubbard SWCD as the fiscal agent. I think it's really important for our county that we were able to do that, and it really mattered that county staff and county representatives showed up to those planning meetings as far as us being nominated to be the fiscal agent, so thank you for that.
And thank you for the collaboration that we've had in recent years. It's very helpful. And of course, for the allocation as well.
Do you have any questions for me?
The Capicona, E. coli, River E. coli, you said that completed, what ended up being done on the project?
So the Capicona River E. coli, we did find that there was more than one source of E. coli, but much of it can be addressed by getting the cattle out of the river. So there's a project is actually still being implemented. We did phase 1 last fall, and we're working on more this year, but the cattle crossing and fencing is being improved, and water is being installed in that out pasture, a water source for the cattle, so that the landowner can gate the river when the cattle go to the other side of the river, so that previously it wasn't gated, so the cows could have access to water to drink. And they would get in the river and stand there, as cattle tend to do when it's hot or there's a lot of flies. So that was the major reason. We do see a little bit of E. coli further upstream, which we are still working on identifying. But that crossing improvement and water installation in the out pasture will address most of it, and hopefully the next round of testing will show that there's no longer an impairment for E. coli, which was a really big issue. MPCA has been wanting to get this section of the stream off of the impairment list for quite a long time, so, yeah.
And maybe to show that I've read the whole thing in detail. Would you like to know about one possible typo?
One what?
One possible typo?
Oh, yes, I would love to know about typos.
Okay, page 14,
Okay.
and under rain monitoring, it said seeking monitors to the following counties instead of townships.
Yep, you were right.
You're much too creative.
I can tell you that it's really interesting to write these internally with everybody writing differently. And then I'm a writer. I have a degree in writing. And I know from all the time I've spent writing that when I've written something for about a month afterward, I see what I think I wrote, not what I actually did write. Yeah.
Done the same thing.
Yeah.
You read right over your own mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Texting,
So
texting, Dave.
thank you. We'll correct that before we print it for any events or anything.
Hey, Traja, I'll switch this to you, and there's a project coming up that might be a valuable one to look at. So,
You want one of these?
that's right, 'cause I gave mine away.
You can have it, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not easier.
No,
Did anyone else need, I have one more with me. Did anyone else need another copy?
I'm just gonna tell you from being here for a few years, this is valuable, and it's really done well, even though it may have a typo. It's really done well, so thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to improving it and hopefully not having typos next year.
I didn't say that. That was gracious.
I appreciate it. Really, truly, when I have typos, let me know. It happens and.
Very well done.
Thank
Yes,
you.
it was very well done.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. It was good to see you all again.
Thank you.
Actually, I guess I have a third one. Was there anyone else who needed one?
Next, we have the library budget presentation.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Good morning. All right, so I'm Melissa Watley. I'm the new Kichigami Library Director since January, and with me is Jody Schultz. She is the Park Rapids Area Library Branch Manager. I don't know how long it has been since you've heard from Kichigami in person in any sort of way, so I really wanted to use this opportunity to discuss with you who we are, what we do, how we are a partner with you in providing library services throughout your county, and just kind of give you a heads up and an opportunity to ask questions. So Kichigami is made up of 9 branches. We have a bookmobile, our headquarters location in Pine River, and then also an e-library of electronic materials and databases. We have 62 regular staff members as well as substitute staff who come and fill in for vacations. We're made up of a partnership of 5 different counties and 9 cities, and then we also provide service to 2 associate libraries within Crow Wing County. Among those 5 counties, we serve a population of over 177,000 people, and just over 73,000 have resident library cards. So we serve quite a large section of those counties' communities. So how do we do that? Our mission is really to enhance the quality of life, providing access to library resources, and we operate in a lot of different counties. We have very large libraries, very small libraries, medium-sized libraries. So we really rely on local expertise to help us discover what is needed in your community and how we can best serve those needs. So we want to empower those libraries to enrich their communities in the ways that their communities need. Not be up on top saying, okay, everyone needs one of these, but what's going on in your community? What do you need from us? We do value public trust, diversity and inclusion, innovation, access, and excellence. So how do we do that? How do we meet these goals? What are the actual activities that we participate in? So we have, and I should have mentioned throughout this slide, all of these photographs were prepared by branch staff. These are all from the Park Rapids Area Library. So these are events that have happened within your community. So we provide programs for the public's education, entertainment, and sense of community. We provide resources that'll help anyone connect with the community. We try to give them the right information at the right time. And with our collection of e-resources, the right time could be 2 a.m. before that term paper is due the next day. So we are really growing that collection in our electronic materials. We provide facilities that are safe, welcoming, and adequate for community needs. There's really been a change in modern libraries, I would say, from just being a book warehouse to being a place of community where people can come together for programming. We provide meeting room space for the public. So that's really something that we are working on, is helping improve the facilities in ways that we can. We also have well-trained staff that care about and connect with their community members. It really is amazing to see the way that library staff connect with their users through their continued interactions. I mean, you really get to know people across that front desk. You get to know what they're interested in, what they need, and that personal touch really does help you connect them with those resources that they need. So really, we are in the business of creating community connections and being an information resource so that people can get the information that they need. So again, just pictures from some of our great events, partnering with the ambulance, all sorts of great things. So what do we do in Hubbard County? So these statistics are from 2021. Every year I submit an annual report to the state that says, here's what we've done, here's what we're doing, and here's all of the numbers to back us up. So the Park Rapids Area Library in 2021, you had 24,500 visits. You had just over 10,000 registered users. From our collection of over 23,000 items, we had more than 48,000 circulated items. So we have a pretty wide variety of materials available. We're always refreshing and renewing the collection. Part of the Park Rapids Library's budget is a materials budget to help us keep those things fresh and nice. And they see a lot of use for it. And speaking to the point that we're not just a book warehouse any longer, though, I do want to point out that we serve a lot of people through our computer internet. So we do have public computers available for people to come in, and that really is a very big service for your residents. You know, there's a broadband access is a big talking point in Minnesota right now. There's people that don't have access to the internet in the way that they need. I think especially with COVID, that really highlighted the need in our communities, because all of a sudden kids were going to school exclusively through the computers. A lot of services, tax filings, talking with your lawyer, even medical practitioners started offering internet visits over personal ones. So it really is a big need in pretty much all of our communities, and we do see a lot of use with the public computer. We both offer like actual computers within the facilities for you to use, as well as wireless internet service, so people can also come in with their own devices in order to use the internet. Another great thing that we offer in Park Rapids is our meeting room space, and those opened up back in June after COVID-19. So these statistics here are actually just June through December, so just a half year of use. We had more than 28 programs, we had 28 programs with 419 attendees, but we also had 107 meeting room uses. So those are individuals coming to meet at the library. It's really a nice service because they can come and meet free of cost, and there's not a lot of places now. I mean, if you're thinking, I got to get my Boy Scouts together, where are we going to do it? If it's not somebody's basement, you might be looking at a pretty high cost. If you're like, oh, well, can we get a conference center? Can we get a hotel center? Where can we go? Well, you can come to the library. I think that that's really a big service that we provide that not everyone is aware of yet. So trying to get the word out about that. But yeah, serving over 900 community members just through that alone. We also operate a mobile library within Hubbard County. I always say this wrong. Is it Besida? Is that the right way to say it? I always want to say Besida, thank you. So we do operate a mobile library in some of the smaller locations throughout Hubbard County. We do a lot of circulation through there. I mean, Nevis is just Nevis, yeah? Nevis? I always get it wrong. Sorry, I'm from Missouri, so I get all the place names wrong. I want to say them Missouri style, and we're just wacky with it, so my apologies. So we do a lot of circulation through those, and that's really a very good service for those communities. Otherwise, they would have to travel to the Park Rapids location or to some of our other locations. So we do also have one down in Wadena. They can go up to Bemidji, but if you're not willing to drive, if you're unable to drive, then those do provide a good resource within your communities.
To help you with Besida, I used to think about it being beside a Bemidji.
Is it next to or is it beside it? Yeah, there you go. That's right. Thank you. I appreciate that. We also have our e-library, which I think is very big resource. It's very, very helpful. You can go to our website any time of day and you can access materials. We do offer ebooks, e-audio books. We have Flipster for magazines, so you can even get on there and look at your magazines, as well as over 60 databases that you can access. So those are very good for school students, for people just doing some research. We have access to a lot of different databases through eLibrary Minnesota. So you can see we had over 131,000 downloads just of our ebooks and e-audio books and magazines. And then for those databases, more than 500,000 uses on those databases. So that's really quite a lot. And again, I think it speaks to the need for those resources when schools weren't open as much, when people were still having to do a lot of that learning online. We really provided a good space for them to come and access those materials. It really helps when schools are not as able to fund those things. The public library, by being across 5 counties and serving 9 different cities, can kind of help be a partner for that mission to educate children. So we do also offer access to physical materials statewide through our interlibrary loan project. So if there's something that you need and we don't have it physically here in Park Rapids, well, let's look online. Let's see if we've got it electronically. Oh, we don't? Give us a couple weeks, week or two, we're gonna get it from outside of the state. And that not only, from within the state, but outside of your community. And that not only includes public libraries, if you're looking for, the hottest, latest James Patterson, it also includes academic libraries. So if there's something where you need to get resources from the university, we can also contact them to get articles for you. We can bring in resources from their library. It really is a great way to expand the reach of your community. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the budgeting principles for Kichigami. So the Joint Powers Agreement is what was signed to create Kichigami. So all of these come from there. So each year we adopt an annual operating budget based on recommendations from the Budget Committee. And our Budget Committee is made up of the 5 county commissioners from the 5 counties that participate. So Tom Kruger is your representative to Kichigami, and he does serve on the Budget Committee. So each city council and county board has the opportunity to establish the revenue that you will provide to Kichigami. So we come to you with a request based upon creating our budget, and then it's really a conversation back and forth. How are you guys doing with your levies, with your increases? What are you thinking for this year? And then we take the opportunity to respond to that. If any signatory jurisdiction, including our counties, provides less than the amount requested, direct library service in that jurisdiction may be reduced accordingly. So because there's so many different partners in this venture, what we kind of have to do is take a look at, okay, well, if you're willing to provide less, we have to kind of make it commensurate to that amount in order to say what services we can provide. So there have been times when, counties or cities are unable to provide as much as is requested, and we kind of take a look at, okay, well, what can we do with that? Are we going to need to reduce materials, reduce hours? Like, how can we still make this work across all of our partners given that amount? So the total revenue, it must equal the expenditure for the direct and indirect attributable to your local service levels. So that's going to include the mobile library as well as the Park Rapids area library. City levies are applied to the service costs for that cities, and then cities and counties do have the opportunity to suggest changes to those service levels in order to adjust the levy request. So really the way that your county budget is built up is we take a look at the Park Rapids area library. We take a look at what kind of costs we're expecting to change from one year to the next. So again, everybody's spoken of it this year. I mean, there's increasing costs in gas, there's increasing personnel costs. For our situation in particular, we do have an incoming union, so those negotiations are still ongoing, but depending on the way that labor contract falls out, we do probably expect to see higher personnel costs, increasing insurance costs. I mean, you look across the board and you see increases. So we do give the cities and counties opportunities to respond to the levy that we have and try to have a conversation to say, okay, well, we're all together in this goal of serving the library community, so how can we make that work in a way that is palatable to all parties? So Into July, we distributed the draft budgets to cities and counties. Here we are now in September. The Kichigami Board will be meeting September 22nd, where we can kind of take a look at what budget change suggestions have come from our cities and counties and how we might be able to respond to that. In October, we'll send a letter to cities and counties to confirm those budget change suggestions. So if anybody has any suggested changes, we can talk through how can we make that happen. November, the Kichigami Board again reviews any kind of correspondence from cities and counties, and then the actual 2023 budget for Kichigami is not approved until January. So we still have quite a bit of time, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and discuss this with you today to try to get that process rolling. So again, key factors in our budget for 23, we do anticipate wage increases and personnel costs. We do anticipate increases in the insurance costs. And because it was such a significant anticipated increase this year, our budget committee kind of took a look at this and said, these are large increases. What can we do to help keep this palatable for our counties, for our cities? So they kind of came up with a plan to cap the levy increases at 3% for all partners. So every city that partners with us, every county that partners with us, we said, okay, let's go and ask them for a 3% increase. And then whatever personnel costs, wage costs increases are growing from there, Kichigami is going to dip into its reserves in order to cover. So if you take a look at the 23 budget for Hubbard County, if you wouldn't mind going down, Jeff, I appreciate that. So there are some changes, some of the bigger ones. There's a reduction in your outreach budget. So the county costs are made up of the cost for Park Rapids Library. We asked the city for a 3% increase. Whatever is not paid by the city goes on to the county budget. And then the county budget also has the additional costs of the outreach. So that's the mobile library coming to your locations. So the outreach budget varies. It's actually based on total costs of time, mileage, and then your percentage of use. So while there is increased wages and gas prices that are generally causing those costs to go up, your county actually has a reduction in that due to less use compared to the region as a whole. So I think Wadena County's is going up just because they use a large share of our service. So even though some of the costs are going up, that particular one saw a reduction.
I was gonna ask about that then.
Yeah.
So you aren't looking at reducing services for the out of Park Rapids areas, just the budget part?
No, that's correct. That's correct. So what we look at is, okay, how much time does it take to drive the route that's within your county? How much mileage does it take to drive the route within your county? That's 50% of the share formula. The other 50% is simply use, because that's going to encompass the cost that it takes for our mobile librarian in order to like get those holds together, process all the books. She actually curates the collection when she goes out to say, well, I'm going to a city with a lot of homeschoolers. We're really going to need to get a lot more juvenile nonfiction on this run. So what you're really seeing is a reduction in that 50% that is the share usage. Just to say, you guys are seeing a little bit less checkouts in your mobile library. Other regions are seeing much larger checkouts. It's taking less of the librarian's time to serve Hubbard County and more of her time to serve, say, Wadena County. So that is not anything proposed to say we're doing less stops, we're spending less time, nothing like that. It's just your share of it based on what it was used last year. So no reduction in services there, absolutely. For the branch library budget, you are seeing an increase. Again, that's largely based on anticipated increases in the wages and insurance. And I will say that's a very specific number there, but again, we are still negotiating our labor contract now, so there may be changes in that. That's not necessarily a final number, so you will probably see updates once all of that is finalized. So what we're requesting from Hubbard County this year is $223,258. That is a 3% increase over your costs of last year. And so what reduces those costs is going to be the amount that's being asked for the city levy for Park Rapids. Again, the branch library budget, city pays the levy to pay some of it, the rest of it goes to the county, but then also a Kichigami contribution. So we're contributing $35,000 in order to keep that levy request down to a 3% increase. So that's kind of the way it all folded together for this year. I'm definitely interested in hearing your feedback. If we would want to see some sort of official letter to let us know kind of where the county's at, what they're thinking. But I do have our board meeting coming up on the 22nd, where I can bring this information back and say, you know, they said we're all good to go, or they suggest these kinds of changes, or they would like to explore these further options. Really, at this point, it's a conversation where we can work together to try to figure out what we need to do. And I also brought Jody, of course, to be able to answer any of your questions you might have about our local library here, so.
I'd like to let the other commissioners know that currently what's in our draft budget is the same as 2022, which is the 216,750. And Kitchigami's request is for a 3% increase to 223,258.
Mhm.
And, you know, I personally would like to see that it to be equal request from the library, because they are subsidizing the total budget for the Park Rapids Library by $35,000 from cash reserves. So, and like Melissa said, you know, there's potential of, you know, if you don't get that full request, then maybe would have to look at what needs to maybe be cut so that they can live within the budget that they're going to get. Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I think we support them.
Okay.
I know my district is northern part of Hubbard County. I've gotten a couple of calls from people because they go to Bemidji to use their public library.
Sure.
And of course, at that point, I just told them, well, that's the Beltrami County's board's decision. I'm not gonna tell them how to spend their dollars, because I don't want them calling me, telling me how to spend
Sure.
Hubbard County dollars. But it brought to mind, I'm sure the majority of the people in my district that use the library go to Bemidji and not Park Rapids, just because of the proximity. Do we contribute to the Bemidji Library at all financially?
I would say not really, no. So the way that the budget stacks up is that, there's certain resources that are shared across the entire region, but for the most part, the money here goes to the Park Rapids Area Library. The budget is built in such a way that Park Rapids costs are paid by the city of Park Rapids, and what is not paid by the city of Park Rapids is paid by the county. Most of the administrative functions that serve all 5 counties and all 9 cities are actually paid through state funding. So we receive regional library basic system support. That pays for me, that pays for the processing, that pays for most of the administrative functions that happen at the Pine River location. So really the money that is budgeted stays here. It pays for the things that you do here. The big difference, I would say, the exception to that is that everybody pays for delivery, but again, we charge you based upon your usage share of that. All the counties pay for the mobile library, but again, we take a look at usage from the previous year in order to say this is your share of that. And then we do also have a rotating large print collection where we have a big one that's kind of shared by everyone, and we rotate it through to keep those titles fresh, as well as books on CD. That's another one that rotates through. So in those ways, I would say those particular resources are kind of shared across the way. But yeah, the money that is paid by the city goes to Park Rapids Library materials. The money that is paid by the county goes towards Park Rapids staff. So for the most part, that's the way it works. Mm-hmm.
And what's the, excuse me, the library's annual budget, the Kichigami Regional Library System?
Oh my gosh, there's a great question. I'm gonna say a little over 3 million, but I wanna make sure that I have the numbers right.
Okay.
You got feedback on that, Mr. Finance Committee?
Okay. And then I know that there's over $4 million in reserves.
Yeah, so,
Tell us how you guys are planning to spend that down.
yeah, absolutely. I want to say it was the 2019 audit. The auditors kind of brought to us the idea that we had a little more in reserves than they thought was a necessary level. So really the board as a whole and then also the finance committee have been trying to work through that process. So they did a lot of digging and a lot of discovering. How did we get to this place? How did these build up over time? And those reserves did build up over more than a decade. They kind of went back and did research into it to find out where it came from and what happened. happen there. And they set what they think would be an appropriate fund balance amount of about 1.9 million. So at this point, we're looking for responsible ways to try to spend that down to an appropriate level. So one of the ways that we're doing that is by setting aside a section of money for capital improvements. All of the branch facilities that we run are actually owned by the cities in which they are located. So we set aside money earmarked for each of our different locations in order to make requests for capital improvements. Because they own those facilities, that's an improvement to them, money they don't have to spend.
I'm assuming that's kind of prorated to the amount that they have contributed?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So they took a look at, exactly so. So Park Rapids actually has gotten a new HVAC system based upon that money.
Well, we had
we're-
some improvements.
We're working on it. We're working on it. Excuse me. You're right. You're right. HVAC improvements from that money.
That was 55,000
mhm.
approximately. Okay.
And other systems are looking at, replacing front doors for Brainerd. They're trying to replace their accessible doors. Pine River was looking at replacing shelving as well as readjusting their staff area. And there's just a whole host of projects that Bemidji's been looking at in order to try to use that. So that was one way that we try to take that money and make it available to the cities for their use. And then part of what we're doing to try to return, I guess you would say, that money to our counties is this levy buy down that we're doing this year. So each of our counties, in order to cap it at that 3% for the county, the rest of that money is coming from Kichigami. So we're trying to use part of that to kind of soften the blow of the large increases for this year. And then I think that the budget committee is going to take a look at how they can use that money going forward, again, to return it to our partners in ways that are going to help their bottom line and keep providing those library services while helping keep your costs down.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Happy to speak on it. Been speaking a lot on it, so I think I got the story straight at this point. I can really.
Well, like I say, with my proximity, I know what's going on in Bemidji.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, I read, the Park Rapids Enterprise, Northwoods, the Bemidji Pioneer, the
Sure.
Minneapolis Tribune, and then a bunch of stuff online, so I'm reading all the time, and I didn't notice any of that fallout that's going on in Bemidji, making it to any of the Park Rapids papers.
Yeah, a lot of the way, it's kind of separate, again, because the budgets are separate. What is happening at Beltrami County is going to impact Beltrami residents in a lot of ways, but you're right, because we are like a 5-county system, sometimes the system in a different county is closer than the library in your own county, so.
And I'm assuming we have some residents that aren't in Hubbard County, like Becker County or whatever, next door that are gonna come to
Yes.
Park Rapids to use our library.
Yep, and we call them reciprocal borrowers, and we have people with LaPorte addresses too, but I know that kind of that's maybe the line where they mostly go toward Bemidji. But yeah, the Minnesota regional library system is really great to be able to reciprocate. You have the digital materials you always get from your county of residence, but otherwise, if you have a library card from one of the regions in Minnesota, you can use it in any.
We see that a lot in Wadena County where, there's the library in Wadena, but there's also that one in Staples, right there for Todd County. So it really does make it very convenient for people to go where they need to go, yeah.
And I'm assuming some of our residents are closer to Walker
Mhm.
and maybe go there too, so.
Yep, absolutely. And they're welcome to go to any location that serves them. If they're going to vacation a couple of counties over, that library's happy to help them as well, so.
It's nice having that freedom.
It does, yeah, it's very nice. And plus, just being able to access, if there's something that you guys need that's not in your Park Rapids library, we do delivery 3 times a week, and we can get it from the Walker Library and bring it to you. You don't have to drive over there. So even through our hold system, it really gives you access to all 5 of the counties, all 9 of those cities, but then with the interlibrary loan, you can go all the way out to the state to get what you need and have it brought in, so, yeah.
So Jody, I have a question for you, because you do periodic book sales. So how do you determine how long a book stays on a shelf?
A lot of that is gonna be based on like the condition of the book itself. I mean, you see a lot higher turnover on, say, toddler books where they're chewing on it and peeling the pages and ripping the stickers off. So a lot of that is gonna be based on the condition. We do have a collection development policy that the board has passed that's online. So some of that also is related to like relevancy of material. You'll see that a lot with the nonfiction. You really don't wanna have like medical advice books from the 90s. A lot's changed since then. So you see higher turnover in those kinds of categories.
Right, and it depends. I mean, there can be something that just really doesn't get checked out for a certain amount of time, or there can be something that's hit a sky-high number of checkouts and, yeah, is just worn out and either needs to be replaced or removed.
And so with your budget for books, how do you decide the books that you can touch?
There's a
How do you-
whole
how do
reading
you
system.
decide
It's a
what to buy?
whole process. And how do we decide what to buy? We also have that in the policy.
So is that online also?
Yeah,
I
our
believe
collection
so.
development policies on our
Okay, I'll go
website. You
in
can take a
on
look
the-
Yeah,
at
it depends on the interests of the community, the needs of the community,
We
different,
do a lot of
different
usage
things.
reports to say what's getting checked out a lot, like your fiction collection versus your nonfiction collection, how many teens are coming into the location and checking out items, to help us determine kind of where to put that budget at. We also take customer requests for items, so we can, you know, if we get requests for
Right,
items.
and then
we
if
can
we
take a
have
look at
something
those.
in the system that's very like that, maybe we don't add that exact item, or if we, you know, there's a lot of, we have to figure out what we have room for on the shelves, and we try to have a large variety so that we're covering many interests and
And we talked a little bit in the presentation about trying to attune local budgets to local needs, you know? So collection development mostly happens within the branch, as far as branch staff saying, this is what I see our community using, this is what I see our community needing. It's less from, I'm not dictating from Pine River what books you guys are buying.
No.
Most of that happens locally
But a
within
nice
the
part about it
branch.
too, about being a part of the region, is that we do have, in essence, co-ownership of all of the other branches' materials. So sometimes, if one branch owns an entire series of something, another branch doesn't put their materials money into that, because we know that we can access it for our patrons from the library down the road.
Yeah,
So there's a little bit of that too.
little less
And
duplication.
one last question, do you have a policy online about accepting donations? Do you have criteria for that also?
Yeah, there's a
Yes.
gifts policy on our website as well,
Okay,
absolutely.
Thank you, I'll check all that out.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, and those are all put together by the board and approved through the board, so. Any other questions?
Well, I have one ask for the commissioners, if we can have Jeff plug in the requested amount and then into the draft, and then along with any other changes that's coming up, work from there and see what we end up with.
And I will just say that I feel like part of a lot of people who work in library systems are very resourceful and very content, and there's not a lot of cutting we can do. Our branch here in Park Rapids, I'm the only person who works 40 hours a week there. The next person in line works 30 hours a week. And it is actually really amazing the things that we're doing with the hours of staff time that we have, and in addition to our front desk service. So I would make a plea that you strongly consider offering what we've asked for, because there's not a lot to trim. And I just don't like the idea of having to cut people's hours or cut open hours for the public. So that's my plea. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And our contact information is on that last slide. My contact information is also available on our website. So again, this budget process is a conversation. So I'm happy to field your questions, talk to you about options that you may want to explore, even just to get to know Kitchigami a little more. You know, like I said, I don't know how often or how recently you have been contacted or had discussions with us, but I really want to open those channels of communication. I think my catchphrase is if money flows along this line, communication needs to as well. So happy to field any of your questions or comments. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I do appreciate it.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair, would that be a consensus of the board to plug in the requested amount?
I think you just probably doing that periodically. Maybe, maybe not.
Before or after you approve a final levy, we will adjust the operating budget to reflect all the changes that have been suggested or made.
I knew you had it covered.
Moving, looking more into the September 22nd meeting.
Next, we have the potential lake improvement district.
That will be a deciding factor for me, I know I
Oh,
will.
yeah.
Good morning.
You sat a long time.
And that's fine. We appreciate the opportunity to get before the board and talk about something that's important to us on Lake Beltane. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. And I really want to thank Commissioner Delahunt, who has been representing and helping us and looking for solutions on how to deal with water management on Lake Beltane. As water height increases, there's impacts. There's impacts not only to property, but also to lake quality. And that's a concern of us. All of us that live on the lake enjoy the quality of the lake. It's one of the reasons we're there. I have allergies, and it's one of the lakes I can swim in the state of Minnesota and not have to worry about reactions. But we have been exploring for 2 years what to do. If you can look at the lake map that is up on the screen here, Lake Beltane has a long history of having issues. The last time this culminated was back in 2001, 2004 time period. That's the peak of the peak that you see there.
May I stop and ask a question?
Sure.
So I'm looking at, and Dave, I believe you said there used to be an outlet that is closed.
Appears like there used to be.
So do you have anywhere in here where you know when that outlet is closed in relation to the water?
We do not.
Okay.
We have a letter of a time period that, with an affidavit as to when it was closed, but there was no permits taken. So it's just, a property owner's affidavit as to where it was. But if you look at the geology and the geography of the area, there seems to be a natural outlet that was there.
So was that somewhere, was it closed, do you think, probably prior to 1955, or that had no reflection on that? Because it went up significantly, or was it really not, were records not kept well?
As to exactly when it occurred, no. The lake itself, from the water level monitoring, is one of the most monitored, or has the best data in the state of Minnesota, according to the DNR, on lake levels
Okay,
as to what's happened.
thank you.
One of the things,
They want to see a picture of what the lake was like in the 1930s.
Oh, I'd like that.
I should introduce, or at least let you know who else is here from us. This is Rob Hall. Rob's family has lived on Lake Beltane for decades. I think they were the Rocky Hills back when they moved in. Steve Hankey, also another resident, Tom May, and Lynn Swagert. Lynn is with Campers Paradise out on the island, and they've been impacted over the years with this. One of the things I want to point out first and foremost here is we are not coming to you with a project. We are not coming with you with a solution. What we are exploring and asking is, we know that there needs to be a lot of community input, buy-in, discussions, things like that with the community, and how do we do that? Who's going to advocate for the lake association and those that are impacted? Last year with the Spider Lake discussion, with water coming back down into the thing, it raised concerns again. And one of the things that if you look at the graphic, the one on the top is kind of historical, the one on the bottom is a little more detailed with the last 10 years. But from the low point to the high point, there's been a 14-foot fluctuation in water levels. And based on past engineering studies that were shown in 2004, that Bowser, the DNR, Soil and Water Conservation District, all the experts agreed is that the lake is in such a way with draining technical that it's going to continue to rise. It goes through wet cycles and dry cycles. And if you look at the history of the lake levels, you can see that the lake goes up and then it does come back down. But when it comes back down, it's always about a foot higher, about every 15 years than it was before. And I don't want to get into the details as to why that is, because again, we're not asking for a project. We're just trying to establish the history that, and hope that there's agreement that there are water level issues on Beltane. And how do we manage them? It's a quality issue. It affects commerce. The resort that I came to as a kid no longer exists. Wade Resort, when it flooded for the second time, they closed. And you can see other properties that have been there that are impacted. At Beauty Bay, there's cabin in the water, and things like that. So, I just want to emphasize again, a lake improvement district is not anything to do with a project. It's just a means that we can get a group of people together, establish a funding source, possibly where we can, those that are affected can kind of be in control of their density, take responsibility for it, be our advocates. So over the last 2 years, we've looked at options. We received some advice from Rinky Noonan, who was involved back in 2004, actually representing the county at the time, on, ideas, thoughts, et cetera, what could be done. We talked with Woodseth Engineering, who did the engineering reports on the project back then, again, just to get some history of what could be done. And they actually had suggested that we consider looking at a lake improvement district, that there are a number of them in the state that have been successful, Lake Shamano being one, Little McDonald being another, where the lake owners and the county worked together to come up with a solution. The Lake Improvement District was created. And in both of those cases, the county actually just approved, without petition, the creation of the Lake Improvement District to let the property owners go forward. And there's a number of authorities that can be granted to a Lake Improvement District, raising funds. The Lake Improvement District then takes over responsibility. It's governed by a board of directors. The county is involved because any assessment that might be agreed to by the property owners needs to go through the county to be collected. But other than that.
John, do you know what counties those are in?
Otter Tail is McDonald, and Todd and Morrison is Chaminade. You know what major issue they were trying to address? High water in Chaminade, and I believe it was high water in McDonald too.
Yeah, in both cases, it was water levels.
And to answer Charlene's question, the affidavit that we secured from a neighbor, the outlet was, the wall was built over the outlet in the late 50s.
Thank you, because if you look at that graph, there's a
Yeah.
great difference. Yep, okay.
So, as we began to look at the Lake Improvement District, as the committee as being an option, we did have conversations. All of our conversations have been with the Lake Improvement, or with the Lake Association, We've had a couple of meetings, the annual meetings with the Lake Association members, and we've got unanimous, almost, I can't say unanimous, you never have unanimous. We've had almost unanimous support to move forward, that lake management levels need to be dealt with and to pursue and move forward. We are being very deliberate.
Stop you there, John.
Okay.
Almost unanimous of those who attended.
Correct. So, I mean, there's 504 members of or property owners around the lake. The Lake Association itself has about 280 members, so a little over half. And the last two annual meetings that we've had representation of above 100 property owners that have shown up. So about just a little over a third, under a half of those are represented. But they become our guide on what we can do. And, you know, I think there is a lot of, there's not a lot of information out there publicly if you haven't been part of the association, because that's where we disseminate the information. And I've talked to some members that aren't members of the association, and a couple of them that I've talked to, once they understood what a lid was, et cetera, they agreed there were problems with the lake level. They weren't necessarily in favor of a lid because it's another level of government, another taxing type thing or whatever, and that was their biggest concern. But they also, when they heard about how a lid operates, they became at least a little more open. I wouldn't say they supported, but they at least became a little more open to the idea, and some are just dead set against it. The question is, and it was a question that was posed to the ones that were opposed, well, if not that, then what? If you agree that the water level is an issue, what do we do? I mean, because nobody's done anything with the thing until there's an issue, and it's usually when it's high water that now all of a sudden it's there, and the best time to really deal with it is before there's high water. So I again want to emphasize, and there's a lot of concern out there, at least from the people that I have talked to that had concerns about it, that we have a project that we're planning on moving forward. They didn't like the 2004 project. We don't have a project. There is no project. We want to create a way that we have a funding source to be able to create that public outreach, get people involved and work through that process. Now, the One Watershed, One Plan is out there, and you all know it has recently been approved for a funding grant to proceed into planning of what the plan is. The One Watershed, One Plan will develop a comprehensive plan of what priorities are and what they are. In the end, assuming something gets in the plan, and we're hoping Beltane water management is in the plan because it's been such an issue for so long. We hope that it's a priority for the county. It's a priority for us. We would like to find a way to be involved with the One Watershed, One Plan committees, or maybe even getting someone appointed on one of the committees to help in the strategic plan. We would like to be part of that, and we believe that that is absolutely critical for anything to go forward, that it has to be in the plan. And it's got to be seen as a problem. So we're not trying to circumvent any of that work, because if there becomes a project in the future, it's going to need lots of approvals. And one of the questions is going to be, is it in the One Watershed, One Plan? And if it's not, it's probably not going to go very far for funding and things like that. So we've been very deliberate. We have not presented anything. We have been working, we retained an attorney after the One Watershed, One Plan, or after we got this thought to pursue from Woodseth, and as we dug into it, we have a firm, Onstead Twitchell, that has been involved in creating and then been involved in Shamano, Little McDonald, and actually another watershed that I believe was in North Dakota border. Sudaboy. And they kind of drafted all, what does the Minnesota law allow, what would be required? And we've decided at this point that we're not ready to bring that forward because we want to work with you for how we move forward. We need advocates. We're not out to create any problems with Fifth Crow Wing, anybody else. We're looking for a solution. We've got a problem. We want to get people to agree that there's a problem, and then get people to agree to whatever solution there may be to that. But that takes time, that takes resources to bring that together. And if the county is willing to step up and provide resources to do outreach and bring people together in a planning process, great. If it happens to be the one watershed, one plan, that's a place to start. In the end, according to the DNR, any project that's approved in the one watershed, one plan is going to need a local sponsor to deliver it. That may be the county, it may be the local soil and water conservation district, or it may be a lake improvement district. But somebody's gonna have to carry it out, whatever it is. So, at this point, we're looking for guidance. We're not here demanding anything. The conversations we've had with Commissioner Delahunt and Administrator Codwell, have been, what can we do? How would you like us to move forward? How can we do this? We just don't want nothing to happen because the water's going up. We've got a problem. Camper's Paradise, if the water rises like it did last year, Camper's Paradise will not open in the spring. And Loon Swaggart's here if you have any questions about that, but they put a lot of money into the causeway again this year, trying to keep it functional. Last year in the drought, the water dropped, but nowhere near what it did on any other lakes, and not even close to where things have been in the past. And the water rose significantly higher this year than what it was. So,
Is it spring fed?
no, it's the bottom lake of the Mantrap chain,
Oh, okay.
and everything in the watershed drains to Beltane. And without an outlet, and there are some natural ways, when you get into the geology, things are happening, but those are becoming plugged over time. And that's why the water levels have to get to the next level so that they can drain for a while until they become plugged. So,
I lived on a different lake in a different county. We had to work with the DNR to try lower the lake. And there was a lot of regulations. So what you're describing right now, is that criteria from the DNR?
yep. And the
It goes very slowly.
the DNR actually supported and helped create the legislation to create a lid, the lake improvement districts. Again, a lid is not a project, a lid is just an organization of, if you look at the question and answers, it is a local unit of government that the county has to create, or if the county doesn't, it can be done by the commissioner of the DNR. However, there's never been one established that by the commissioner, it's always been, by the county, so why force something? But it's established by resolution, and it allows for greater involvement in the lake management activities by those that are directly impacted by it. And, when you talk about raising funds and things like that, and, taxing, and the Lake Improvement District does not function like a town board, a county board, a city board. There are 5 to 9 directors that are there. The directors create a budget, create whatever the issue is, create a budget, but the budget is merely a recommendation from the board. It needs to be ratified by all, or not by all, by a majority of the members of the LID at an annual meeting. And so if it's over $5,000, the people in the district get to vote whether the budget's approved or not approved. Similarly, if there's a project or anything else, the board of directors can't just take testimony and then say, we're gonna adopt this budget. They literally have to have the buy-in from the members to move forward. It
So-
takes a lot of work to do this.
I have a question. In the event a district is terminated or fails to meet its obligations, its responsibilities and liabilities pass to the county. That established the district. So let's say you guys took on a project that cost, I don't know, $75,000, and then for some reason you disbanded, the taxpayers of Hubbard County would then be liable. If I read this, is that correct?
That's what I was questioning too.
And
So
that,
even though you're saying this doesn't involve the county, it really does involve the county. You know, initially, the county board appoints who I'm assuming Beltane member, I'm not opposed to this, I'm just
Sure.
asking
No, no,
questions
no,
for
I-
finding out. You know, we would take input from you for board members, so the county appoints that, but it looks like once we appoint that board, the county's out of that obligation. But financially, I think we would have a responsibility to the lid.
right, and again, it would be a question for the attorneys, and we're not there, and that's something that we could definitely ask if that, we move forward or how we move forward. My understanding is that while the county creates it, the county also dissolves it.
Well, I'm on the Heritage Board, and this kind of reminds me of that in a way.
Sure.
So that's, I want to be very careful.
Yep. And again, we don't have all the answers. We're here just to find out. We want to work with, and if those are concerns, how do we address them? And how do we move forward?
I think with the Crowing watershed plan coming online pretty soon, that would be a good way to start. Like, make sure people from Beltane are on the advisory committee.
Is it you or,
I'm the.
so
the one.
maybe you could work together to make sure that somebody got on.
Have they contacted you yet? Okay.
No.
Maybe along with Dave, we can make sure that someone from your interest group would be on that committee.
Yeah. And we've been working with Crystal and Jake and Darren Hoverson. Again, looking for that direction, but we don't know how someone gets appointed to that board. We think it's probably through the elected bodies, either the Soil and Water Conservation District or the county board that make recommendations.
It's usually who will volunteer to be on those boards.
Well, I would think if you would work with, you work with the Crystal, but Tom as a county representative would,
I will be
Could
pushing
recommend.
Crystal about,
Okay.
about making sure that we get somebody there on it. And, like Shar, I have a huge hesitation about creating another taxation entity.
And Dan.
Yeah, and Dan too. So I think, my own thoughts is this would probably be the way to help you out, is working with the Crowing watershed.
Right,
And you do have a lake association already,
correct.
so that's a good start. I got in on the tail end of the Leech Lake One Watershed Plan, and I'm the vice chair on the Mississippi Headwaters One Watershed Plan. And I think the watershed plan is gonna be the way to go to help you folks because of all the things that are gonna be involved, but I think the big thing is gonna be financing something to help you out. With a lid, you can't ask that kind of dollars from people in that district.
That is true. However, a lid, assuming the county grants the authority, does have the ability to go to the state for bonding, go to the feds for bonding. It does have the ability to recoup assessments from lid members. But, if, let's say it's a $3 million project, I would agree. I mean, as a property owner, coming up with that kind of money isn't there. But if we have the authority granted as part of the lid, we can actually go and get bonding authority. Steve has done some research in Chaminade.
Chaminade got $350,000 from both the state and county and, Donald got a $10 million project. That would get out of Otter
But
I don't know if that was federal or state, but it came from.
funding can also come, through the watershed from, Bowser and even bonding.
Correct, it can. One of the things that we found with the research is that the watershed, one plan will get somewhere between 500 and $1 million per year that they can use towards projects. Now, they do expect that there will be matching people, organizations, agencies will have to match that. But when you look at the size of the Crow Wing, one watershed, one plan, and it goes from basically Upper Mantrap chain all the way down to Brainerd, includes Gull Lake. I believe there's 10 different organizations, counties, that it includes, that even if it's $1 million, it doesn't go very far in that regard. So there can be some planning grants and stuff like that, but, it's gonna take a substantial amount of effort if there's anything to be accomplished.
Another reason why I kind of leaning towards the watershed is that whatever is decided to do to drain Beltane, it's gonna affect people downstream. I'm on Second Crow Wing, so if you're draining water into the Crow Wing chain, it's gonna affect the lake that I live on. So with the watershed, we got involvement of the entire watershed instead of just people in the district making decisions on what to do, and then it affects, however it affects the others, so that's the way it is.
Right, and again, not to get into it because we don't have a project. Any project, whether it be the Lake Improvement District or the county or the Soil and Water Conservation District, any project that anyone would propose needs to go through a planning and extensive approval process, regardless of who does it. So that's the other thing. A project, the Lake Improvement District can't just say, we want to do this project and do it. There's all kinds of regulatory authority that you have to do and go through. And that would be the same for a LID, as it is for a county, as it is for the DNR, in that process. So it is extensive. And the reason we want to work with you to come forward, as I mentioned, the Lake Improvement District is a lot of work. We aren't surprised. Commissioner Delahunt and Administrator Caldwell advised that we're not likely to approve a LID via county action. We're gonna want a petition. Well, that requires someone to go out and make contact with every property owner that would be in the district and get active participation, yes or no, to sign a petition. We also believe that, you only need 50% plus one for a majority. That's probably not gonna cut it. And frankly, in our opinion, it's not gonna cut it either, because we want unanimous, or we would love to get unanimous support, we never will, but we wanna get a super majority of people that say, yes, this is how to proceed forward and how I get input. That's a lot of work, that's a lot of energy, and if we put together a proposal that did all that work, and then we got to the county board to approve it, and you said, nah, we don't like this, we don't like this, we don't like this, that doesn't help anybody either. And it might just rankle people's feathers on the whole thing. And again, we want to build a partnership here. Is how we're moving forward, is let's agree that there's a problem, and then let's work to how we get there. So that's where we're at. We are concerned, and might be asking for your thoughts or inputs on how we deal in the interim, because the one watershed, one plan, according to Crystal, will get up and going here maybe after the first of the year. And then it could take 18 months to 2 years before the plan is adopted. And we're trying to figure if there's any way, if the water continues to do historically what it's done, there are gonna be interim issues in that, and how do we minimize that idea to kind of get people involved and engaged and locally in the issue, well the other system works. Because I'm sure the tax impacts and the impacts to businesses, just if Campers Paradise goes out of business, will have a impact to the county in itself. So, and I'm just using that one, knowing the amount of people that they bring in every year. So,
I'd like to share kind of where I sit on this. It'd be nothing new to the folks from Beltane. We've had these discussions, but you guys, be new to you. First of all, I clearly believe there's a problem. I mean, it's been existing for long. If you look at the data, it goes through a trend, and the mean line just keeps ending up higher and higher when it peaks. So the problem's probably not gonna go away. The time to address the problem is when the water levels drops back down. But that's when it gets forgotten. And then it's an emergency the next time the water level rises again. So personally, I believe something needs to be done. I think most people would agree with that. It just comes down to the only differences I have. A lot of cases is what's the best method for doing it? What's the best strategy for actually getting something done? I have concerns with the lid because, just like many have mentioned, it's another layer of government, and I'm not big on that, never have been. I also believe it's a watershed problem, just not a Lake Beltane problem. I believe it's a Man-Trap Lake problem, and you can even expand that further. If you're gonna say it's a small watershed problem, it's a larger watershed problem, hence the concept about what's different now than before is these one watershed, one plans. They have the capacity, they have the approval once it's in the comprehensive plan. They have most of the regulatory authorities and everything else that have approved and signed off on these plans, and they have non-competitive grant funds. So it's an easier funding source if you can get it in the comprehensive plan. That would be the first goal. The other concerns I have with the lid is the powers of the lid that if we did adopt a lid, what would they be? I don't want to create a domino effect where every lake association comes before this county board and starts asking for a lid. Because they want to regulate surface water activity, AIS activity, which is already a duplication of what the county does, erosion, you can go on and on and on and on. So in order to even consider, in my viewpoint, a lid, you would have to come with a very narrow scope of what makes Lake Beltane different than every other lake. And I believe you have that, but the scope of what the lid powers would have to be very narrow. Yeah, because I don't want to kick the domino over, because I know how, and it's not a knock, but I know how lake associations, they're very passionate about different things, and they'll all want one. And then Shar mentioned, if the lid fails to do its job, the financial responsibility reverts back to the county. Well, even bigger than that is the liability. If the lid fails to do its job and it creates some libel, where's that fall on? Does that fall on the county? So that's an even bigger concern there. And then the termination aspect of it, if you look into the information you provided on a lid, in order to terminate, the county can't terminate. The members have to terminate.
sure.
And so that could create a source of conflict over time if it's not done correctly or if there's adversarial positions on things. So those are my big things. So I really think the answer is to keep considering. Maybe at some point a lid might be necessary and might be the only option, but I really think the focus should be on the one watershed, one plan, getting somebody on that advisory committee, pushing hard that this is a problem and it's not going away and it needs to be in the one watershed comprehensive plan. If that doesn't end up in the comprehensive plan, then we're gonna have to revisit other options again. And a lid may be, one of the options we have to look at again. But why create that extra layer of government when you may not have to?
Right. Tom has a really good idea and thought process, and I think that's where it needs to go.
The other concern you raise up, I know you guys want something to be done, and you feel like you're just sitting here and nothing's being done and nothing's being done. But even if you create the lid and you do some work, I don't think it's gonna speed up the process any faster, because you're still gonna need the big behemoth of government to come up with funding. And that's where the snail thing is anyhow. If you get in that comprehensive plan, that part's kinda locked up. Now it's just a matter of when, within that 10 years, they're gonna decide to start the project. Or plan the project and then put it into fruition. I don't think you'll have a problem finding whether it's the county or our soil and water conservation, to be the fiscal agent for the project. If the funding is there, I can't imagine that being a problem.
And I think with the One Watershed plans too, they've used the dollars to do studies. I know they're doing a retrofit project in the city of Bemidji, and because of the work that the One Watershed plan did, they made it possible for them to apply for grants to pay for that retrofit project. So this might be the same thing, where the One Watershed plan will help identify this problem, probably help plan how to correct it, and then that would make it available for other grants, possibly to help fund it. And there may be some bonding involved there too, or something like that.
Sure. Well,
I'm listening and I'm agreeing with what you guys are all saying, and yet, you know what, I have lived where you guys are. The lake lot we had, we bought it, it was beautiful, it was nice, you know, just went out to the water, and for 3 years, it was sandbagged so we could try save our house. I know everywhere you go, you're getting the runaround, because I've been there. And if you wanna look at a disaster, all you have to do is look at Spitzer Lake down in Clitheroe, Minnesota, and if you've seen what's happened over the last couple of years. But I'm sorry, things do not move fast for solutions like this. Like Tom said, you know, if you wanna do something here, it's gonna affect something down here. And so the best course of action is to try work with an agency that can do something. Cause just to, I can't remember how many inches it was to take off a Spitzer. It was over $1 million, and that wasn't even a solution. That was just to try save some property in the short term. And so hopefully the One Watershed, One Plan, cause that's what they're designed to do, is to look at the entire picture and find a long-term solution.
Yeah, it's not like we don't, I mean, I think I shouldn't say all, but I think all of us agree there is a problem. And, you know, I have family members, as you know, on the lake, numerous family members, close. And I think that Tom's suggestion, through the watershed plan, get them on there, at least get them connected, is the place to go. Not per se us at this time. That's my personal thought.
And we can't offer funding solutions to you, and the One Watershed one, because it's gonna take, not only planning, it's gonna take money.
right, and I think, you know, I guess I'm encouraged to hear that everyone here at the county board level agrees there's an issue. And I would never ask you to say, what's the solution, because we don't know what a solution is. I don't know if it's gonna be millions of dollars. It might be. There might be a simple solution that involves reopening the drainage that was historically there that got blocked. It could run the gamut, we don't know, but our purpose is, I lived through the 2001 through 2004. I had $10,000 into the study as a local lake owner myself that I lost and got nothing out of. And I know people that lost significantly more money that contributed, and there's not a desire for us to go down that road again. We do know that there's outreach. We do know there's differing opinions. We do know that we need to unite people, you know, to get together as much as we can. But we can't do it alone. We can't do it as individuals. We were down there. It financially destroyed one person that I know of in that. And they were not going to be affected even by the high water. It was the lake quality that was going to be issued. And I was in the same boat. So we are frustrated. We are concerned.
about how we move forward. Who's gonna look out for us if we don't look out for it? And that's all we were trying to do in researching and looking at the lit is how can we be partners? How can we take responsibility and come to you and come to others and get that? Because doing nothing is just gonna hurt everyone, including the county as a whole from an economic perspective. If we start losing resorts and people coming here to purchase homes and values go down and things like that, because lake quality goes down. So, the partnership is what we want to have from everyone here, and we want to be respectful of everyone's opinion, but getting people to agree and understand that there's a problem is 3/4 of the battle. Because if everybody agrees there's a problem, then we can come together to come up with something that everyone can live with. And it is a timing thing, because if you're not directly living there and you're not directly impacted, or Lynn and Campers Paradise wondering if they're gonna have income next year because they can't open, that affects that livelihood. And that does raise that concern. So how do we get there? And it takes time. We understand that, but we also want to do what we can to shrink the time to whatever's reasonable, and go from there. So, I mean.
Sounds like you and Tom need to trade contacts.
And we appreciate direction. Again, Commissioner Delahunt has been very, very helpful in the discussions that we've had. So has Administrator Cadwell in doing that. And that's why we're here asking for input, asking for what authorities, asking about moving forward before we go and do anything and get people down one direction or a different direction. So.
As I've shared with you, I won't forget about the problem.
Yes.
And then, number two, we really have to strategically think about what the best way to get the problem fixed is. And that's why I'm leaning the way I am first. Exhaust that option of the one watershed, one plan first, because I strongly believe that that is the best course of action if we can get it done. If we can't, then we have to look at other potential solutions. But if you get it in there, the pathway just gets a lot easier. You're scoring touchdowns instead of kicking field goals in.
Yep.
I hope this gets taken care of, not 20 years from now. We've already been dealing with it for that long.
Yep. Thank you, Tom.
Soil and Water Conservation Board meeting tomorrow morning that I go to, and I'll bring this up. Can I maybe get your name and
Sure. It's John Maczko, Maczko.
MAC
ZKO.
phone number?
612-202-6207.
I'll forward you his email, Tom.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your direction and your thoughts, and probably most importantly, understanding and agreeing that there is a problem on Lake Beltane that needs a solution. We just don't know what that is yet.
All right. Thank you, John. Well, if there's nothing else, I believe we're adjourned.
I have one quick question for Jeff. Can you wait for me?
I got a question for Jeff too, but let's see, Jeff's got an appointment at noon, I think.
Well, my
Is that
quick
correct?
question is
I
just a computer.
have no time